Let's talk about Jesus and Mary's secret relationship. Good morning, my friends. It is a beautiful day outside. It's 60 degrees on the back deck. It's a little loud this morning because it's rush hour right now and I can hear all the cars back there. So I thought I'd do this video from inside with my beautiful mug of coffee. Jesus and Mary and their secret relationship. So you guys know I'm going to refer to them as Jeshua and Mariam from this point on. Were they married? Did they have children? Did Maryam travel to Europe and to the UK? Was she hidden as a testament to the bloodline of Jeshua? All of these things are fascinating stories. My personal opinion is they're all trying to find meaning in something far more simple. Jeshua and Maryam were madly in love with each other. In my second regression, he referred to her as Ishti, which is a Hebrew word meaning wife. Staying kind of out of my beliefs about it, let's just talk some history for a second. Were they married? To believe they weren't is a uniquely modern Christian thing, because they lean into the teachings of Paul, who was an apocalyptic preacher who believed the end times were coming in his lifetime. He was also a Pharisee, and as a Pharisee, his beliefs about spirituality and sex have a very unique perspective. He believed that everyone should be celibate, but especially the people who were, the most holy had to be celibate in his mind. In 325, after the Nicene Council, they started to compile the modern Bible, the earliest version of which I believe is known as the Codex Sinaiticus. The New Testament became 50% Paul's teachings because Luke was Paul's disciple. So the New Testament, half of the stories of Jeshua in the modern Bible come from a guy who was a Pharisee who believed that everyone should be celibate and that the second coming was coming in his lifetime. But when you go into the Gnostic texts, the books that didn't make it into the Bible because they were edited out, saying that they didn't fit the canon, in the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Philip, Gospel of Mary Magdalene, Maryam, there are references to her being Jeshua's companion. There's references to her being the one that I love more than all others. There are these amazing references about basically this loving relationship between these two. But these texts didn't make it into the modern Bible because it went against Paul's teachings. Later on, what happened with her is the churches began to villainize her, and it literally made her the prostitute in the stoning story. The Bible never says that's her. The text never say that. The original text never say that's her. This was a later theologian's interpretation or addition to basically prove that Jeshua was this holy man who had nothing to do with sex. In the modern Bible, she only shows up in a couple of key moments, but they are pretty darn key moments. She's said to be there at the crucifixion with Mother Mary. Now, this does agree with my past life regression. John was with Maryam and Mother Maryam, right? He was with them. That's why he was there. He was there because, mother, here's your son, there's your mother. His job was to take care of these ladies. She was also there at the resurrection. She was the one who discovered him. Now, why would she be the one who goes to the tomb? Why would she be the one above all others that would go to the tomb? Probably because she was his wife. That's probably the reason why. They had that relationship, that special relationship that makes it so beautiful, and she was devastated. Now, that also lines up with my regressions because I remember after the crucifixion, her being with John in Galilee and her just being a completely devastated woman. And it was very, very tough, very hard. And I have memories of her family coming and getting her and taking her back to Magdala because John was going on the road preaching, teaching. Mariam was a devoted wife, a loving partner, a loving companion. I have memories of them just giggling and laughing together. That's why I painted the one painting of it, because I wanted to show her laughing, her smiling. And I wanted to make sure I got that face right, because I think she's been villainized in history wrongly. And I think that she was a beautiful, wonderful person who loved her husband. The thing about history and the thing about spirituality is people tend to negotiate into text certain things to make them feel righteous, to make them feel good about their lives. And over the course of 2,000 years, more and more things have been added into this story. And it's kind of sad because the story of a woman and a man who completely loved one another through all of the torments of life is an amazingly beautiful story. And when you look at this from the perspective of, why can't that be a great story? Why isn't that a great story? Why do we need to embellish and add? Well, people did for centuries. They embellished, they added, they changed, they put things in that to make it seem more viable to them. And let's talk about a few of those. There is this idea of the bloodline of Jeshua and Mariam. There was multiple conspiracy theories that Maryam was pregnant and ran off to the UK. Why the UK? That's the biggest question. Why go there? Well, all of these theories that she came to the UK never existed until the Middle Ages. And the Holy Grail, it's a medieval myth. The book Holy Blood, Holy Grail leans into these spiritual conspiracy theories of this idea that the body of Mariam was carried to the UK. But in that book, they lean into sources, and all of the sources they lean into have never shown any proof of what they're saying. They've claimed that they found proof. They've claimed that they have the documents. They claim but they never showed them to the world. One of the stories is of a man who wanted to be part of the bloodline of Jeshua himself. He found a friend who could fake religious documents, and they literally put these documents in church libraries all over France. Well, people leaned into the story that he was this, and he was the bloodline of Jesus. And well, next thing you know, they found out that this guy was creating these fraudulent documents. How did they find out? They broke into his house. The police came in and busted down the door, found him creating documents. And it was all a fraud. So this has been happening for generations and generations. People taking this storyline and embellishing it and making it more. Now, in the modern New Age, you've got people like R.J. Spina who's saying that she was the same as Jesus. She was a split soul, and that there was 24 disciples. There was 12 men and 12 women. He'll never show you one single document. He'll never show you anything. He'll say it's all things he got while he was channeling. It's a New Age story that takes you away from a more beautiful story. A man loved his wife. A woman loved her husband. Beautiful story. No need for anything more. But people are embellishing it, not for the idea of truth, but more for the idea of controlling the narrative, controlling the story, and embellishing and making things more. All these stories have created more division, especially this R.J. Spina one, because he literally is dividing men and women. He's saying, no, it's equal, it's equal, it's equal. Well, yeah, Jeshua believed in equality too. But if you read any of the ancient texts, you'll find out that even in the Gospel of Mary, she says, Peter says to her, "Why should we listen to you? You're a woman." People try to put modern sensibilities on ancient times. People ask me all the time what what was like in the time of Jeshua, and I always come back with the same answer. I said it's like Afghanistan today. You've got a religious and militant authority who are subjugating the people to their will. It's based upon their religion, and women are subjugated to men. That's what it was like back then. And historians agree. This holy bloodline theory became an even bigger story when Dan Brown wrote the Da Vinci Code. And he took all of that evidence, all of that story, and he embellished it into a book, and then which became a movie script with Tom Hanks. And then, really interestingly, right after that happened, suddenly all of the modern channels started talking about the bloodline and the children of them. And they started, the modern channels who now had this new idea put into their subconscious, started finding the storyline of Mariam. But it's not in any way, shape, or form documented. It's somebody saying it and claiming it, but not willing and can't prove it. They can't show you the evidence of it. There's a lot of evidence that say she was his wife, his companion. These are actually in the ancient texts written in the 2nd century. But there's no evidence of any of the bloodline stuff anywhere else. That is a modern ideology. Moving into this new modern ideology, you find that people started to stand on their soapboxes. You find the modern feminist movement talking about her being this hugely powerful being. You find the rise of the concept of the sacred feminine. In that division, you've now separated by gender, and now you've got soapboxes. And people stand on soapboxes and yell. People stand on soapboxes and yell. And what are they yelling? They're yelling about the other people on the other soapboxes. So you've created a division which is completely antithetical to all of Jeshua's teachings. Love one another. He didn't say love one another if they're a man or a woman. He didn't put a division in any of it. He just simply said love one another. It was a beautiful message of love and acceptance. It was the beautiful message that everybody wants. Equality. They want that beautiful equality. But as it gets embellished, as it gets added to, as it gets into this idea of bigger and greater storylines, they lose the beautiful simplicity of love between two people. They lose it because now they're looking for these bigger, giant pictures. They're following pathways away from the truth, in my opinion. They're losing the idea that a man and a woman loved one another, and they were sharing a truth about your own divinity. But people get so invested in the stories, they stop going back and looking at the core of it, a loving relationship that taught people to love one another. And these storylines are less about finding spiritual things, as opposed to finding a conspiracy, that secret knowledge that we didn't know. That's just to make someone feel right. It has nothing to do with the truth. It has everything to do with, I believe that because this person said it. And then when they come to my channel and they start spewing that, and I say, and I quote, "Show me any evidence." And I have not had one person actually pull out evidence. I've not had one person. And when they try to, they say, "Well, I got it from this person." And you go to that person, you ask them, "Where's their evidence?" They don't have it. None of these theories have any basis to them. There's no evidence, especially the ones that are saying it now are claiming that this was, ancient. We knew this in the ancient times, right? But there's no evidence from the ancient times that says that they knew that. It's completely 100% someone putting themselves in a position of authority with information that they've brought through themselves. And that's less about the teachings of Jeshua and more about that person's need to feel powerful, in my opinion. People try to add symbolism to ancient texts, and the idea that marriage was a sacred unity between da 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 da. Marriage is a religious construct. It's the idea of these two people must be married to have children. And especially in Catholicism, they're very specific. They're very openly specific that if you have any inclination to the opposite sex, you are to get married and have more Catholics. If you don't have that inclination, you are now subject to the holy orders. You're now supposed to become a priest or a nun. So it comes down to this idea that in your life, you are subject to the whims and wills of people who will tell you things. And I don't think anyone should ever give in to something just because someone says it, including me. I'm speaking my truth, and I'm very clear about that on my channel. I am speaking my truth. I am never asking you to take it. I'm never telling you that you have to believe what I believe. I'm just telling you what I believe. I would never try to subjugate you into a belief. When you start reading these other spiritual conspiracy theories, you'll find out that they're trying to prove their belief to you so that you'll believe it. And spirituality is a personal journey. One of my truest beliefs. Thank you, Mom. All right. That we are to find our own way. But I think in finding your own way, you have to look at the information you're getting and simply prove it. Make sure that you're believing the right things. Mainstream Bible theologians argue distinctly against any relationship between Jeshua and Mariam. They argue against it. Why? Because they've chosen the Bible to be the Bible, the infallible document that has to be. And so they've chosen to believe Paul. When you look at it from that perspective, that whole idea goes away of a bloodline or even a relationship. But at one point, the disciples literally call him rabbi. Well, if you're a Hebrew, you know that to be a rabbi means to take a wife. You have to take a wife to be a rabbi. It's part of the doctrines of the Jewish faith. So to call him a rabbi means he has a wife. There's far more evidence of the loving relationship and the marriage than there is against it. But the against it story has gotten huge within the churches. It's once again, it's the chosen belief that people are taking. And that's the old age version where they're believing the Bible. The new age version is they're believing the channelers who are telling stories that are coming from their subconscious, from books they've read and movies they've seen, and they're creating this story around this beautiful, loving couple. In one of my regressions, Jeshua said, when you seek a path is laid before you, but until you turn the path back to yourself, you never find the doorway. All of these fascinations with secret knowledge and hidden information are all just pathways. They're pathways away from yourself. They're pathways away from a simpler truth, the truth that this man and this woman loved one another beautifully, and that he had found this pathway to his own spiritual awareness of his oneness with God. Beautiful story, wonderful story, no need for more. But people want that secret knowledge to make them feel like they've got something special, like they've created this space where I know this secret knowledge because I'm on my pedestal, I'm on my soapbox. And when you look at it from that idea, they literally are going away from themselves because of the path of the story that they're telling to themselves, or the path of the story that someone's telling to them and that they're choosing to believe. So it literally comes down to the idea that it's all far simpler. Occam's razor says, given all, the simplest solution is usually the right one. And more than likely than not, the idea that they were a loving couple and he found something special within him is a beautiful story. But why do we need to have all this secret knowledge? Well, that's because people are looking for something outside of themselves to tie to. But Jeshua said that until you turn the path to yourself, you never find the doorway. It's a matter of letting go of all the stories on the outside about Jeshua and Mariam and coming back to this space of living, loving, living the teachings, love one another. That's the sad fact about all these stories of bloodlines and all these stories of, Jeshua could not have been married because he was a holy person. They're all just pathways away from ourselves. They're all just pathways that show us that we're looking for something of sacred knowledge. We're looking for this power of the divine feminine. We're looking for these pathways away from ourselves. But when you turn the path inward, there is no gender. There is no need for a greater story. There's just us in the now. The kingdom of heaven is within you, is what he said. It's not outside on these paths. It's within you. You come back to this space and live into this space, and you find a greater awareness because you've come back to being the love, and God is love. And what a greater expression of love was there than Jeshua and Mariam's love for each other as they giggled and they laughed and they just loved being together in the moment. If you want to come to know Jeshua and Mariam more closely, look at the relationships in your life. Find the people who you love without condition. Find the people who you just adore, and they represent love to you. When you find those people, you've come closer to understanding Jeshua and Mariam's relationship. There were no conditions. It was completely unconditional. They simply loved one another. They came together and they laughed and they joked and they just fawned over each other. She would lay her head on his chest and just giggle. He would caress her hair. It was a beautiful, loving relationship between a man and a wife. And when you look at this, all these embellishments and all these stories that try to make it this myth, remember that. It's just a myth. Somewhere back in time, a myth probably had someone who had a name similar, and they probably did something that was remarkable. But the mythology over the years grows into something bigger. Maybe a flood was coming and some guy grabbed his few farm animals and threw them on a boat and raised up. Next thing you know, God told him to choose all animals of the world 2 by 2 and load them into a bigger boat that he created. It was probably one guy who saved his farm animals when a flood came, and the mythology grows. And mythology is ever growing. The idea of sacred bloodlines and split souls, and these are mythologies. These are literally mythologies being created in the New Age. Now you have to understand that the New Age, even the remote kernel of these ideas, are about 40 or 50 years old. 40 or 50 years old. They don't come from the ancient times. They come from the now. Split souls is very clearly a 1990s New Age belief. The sacred feminine comes out of this idea that women who were treated very poorly throughout history were coming into their power. And usually when you have this idea of coming into your power, you swing far to the opposite side and eventually it settles in the middle. But, going all the way out here to the other side, that process of going way out to the one side makes the process go longer, makes the process last longer. Come to the middle, be in the now, understand that there is no division between masculine and feminine. There's oneness. Come to the oneness that Jeshua and Mariam knew. Come to the oneness. The Father and I are one, and you must become one with me as I am with the Father. We're all one, right? Whatever you do to the least of my brothers, that you do unto me. It always comes back to that oneness. The new ideas are creating divisions between masculine and feminine and religions and ideologies and so many different, even right now in politics, there are divisions. Be just one. Come back to the oneness that Jeshua and Mariam knew and live a loving life. And if you're living a loving life, if you are doing things you love, living the things you love, surrounding yourself with people you love, remember that God is love. You're in the oneness of God when you're doing those things, like Jeshua and Mariam were. And so, my friends, let me once again say, I am only speaking my truth. I'm not asking you to take it, but I would like you to consider it, because when you look at the stories that are out there, you're going to find that they're to validate your beliefs. But when you find that none of them have basis in evidence, that they're coming from a person telling the story, you find that they can't be validated in any way, shape, or form. People say, well, I'm using my discernment. Sure. Our discernment is based upon what we choose to believe. I would say strip away all your beliefs, forget all you know, come back to the now, and just be loving. That's what Jeshua and Mariam did. And she went to the tomb the day after because that's where her love was. That's where the man that she loved, the man that she married, that's where he was. Of course she went to the tomb first. Of course she went to the tomb first. Of course she was at the crucifixion because she wouldn't leave her husband's side. She specifically said to be at the foot of the cross with John and Mother Maryam. The two Marys and John were at the foot of the cross. Why would the book say it? Why would she be so important to be there with them at that time? The evidence leans very clearly towards someone with a very special relationship to Jeshua. But she was distraught. She was crying. She was wailing at this, what was happening to him. She was a beautiful woman and a wonderful wife, and was devastated in that moment. Now let's end this on a happy note. In Hinduism, they believe in Sri Isa. They believe that Jeshua was in India from the time of his childhood until he came back to Israel in his 30s. I have no evidence of that whatsoever. None. I can't prove it. I'd like to believe it. I know that the teachings that he was delivering were not Christian. They were much more Eastern than that. They were very much leaned into oneness and all of that. After the crucifixion, they believe he came back to India with his wife and had children and died there. I personally like to believe that. I don't state it as fact. I'd like to believe it. The reason I like to believe it is because I think they deserved a happy ending as opposed to a terrible, torturous crucifixion. And so, for me, I like to believe it. So when I think of that idea, I smile. It makes me laugh. I can just see them, traveling away, loving one another off into the sunset. Love that idea. I can only come from my own past life regression memories. My last memory of Jeshua was after the crucifixion, but he was alone. Maryam had already gone back to Magdala with her family. But my hope is, after that last memory I have of him, that he went and got her and took her. That's my hope in their story. I have no belief in any of the bloodline stuff. I have no belief in any of the split souls and the balance of energetic power between masculine and feminine. I have no belief in any of that because I think it's all far simpler. My first regression said, it's so simple we have a hard time comprehending it. And so I measure all of my beliefs around simplicity. And in doing so, I found a pretty joyful, loving life. And I think it's a testament to Jeshua and Mariam's life and being in that expression. And that's my thought on this. You guys have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon. See ya. Bye.